Before I started Hunter x Hunter, I made one rule for myself. Don't watch the legend, watch the show. I broke that rule anyway. Everyone does. Because when people spend years calling something the greatest anime ever made, you stop watching the actual show and you start testing a legend, and legends almost never pass that test. By the end of Hunter x Hunter, I finally understood why people worship it and exactly why I can't join them. The Hunter exam is a solid opening arc, not a great one, a solid one. Most of the characters introduced there didn't really grab me at first. Gon, Killua, Kurapika, I liked them fine, but fine isn't the same as hooked. Then Hisoka showed up, and immediately something shifted. Every scene he was in got more interesting, not because of his power, but because of his presence. The moment he took a specific interest in Gon, it added a layer of menace that made everything feel higher stakes. Somehow this blatantly unsettling character became the most entertaining person on screen. Two other characters stood out early: Illumi, whose wrongness is visible the second he appears, and whose connection to Killua recontextualized everything about that character, and Netero, who radiates the specific energy of someone hiding something enormous. Then there is Lierio. I know he becomes a fan favorite, and yes, his goal of becoming a doctor to help people who can't afford treatment is genuinely noble. But through most of the Hunter exam, I kept waiting for a moment where he earns it on screen. A moment where the competence matches the conviction. For a long time, it never came, not until the later arcs. The Killua rescue arc was fine. What it did do well was establish the friendship between Gon and Killua, which would eventually become one of the show's strongest assets. But Heaven's Arena is where Hunter x Hunter found something genuinely special. Nen. I'll say it plainly, Nen is one of the best power systems I have seen in anime. Not because it's the most powerful, but because it's the most intelligent. It rewards creativity, strategy, and deception over raw output. Early Nen fights felt like chess matches where both players were also trying to hide their pieces. Hisoka vs Castro is the perfect example. The way Hisoka's victory is revealed, layered, logical, and showed exactly what this system was capable of. And yet even here, I wasn't fully sold on Gon as a character. He exists primarily through action rather than interiority. We see what he does, but we rarely hear him think. That's not necessarily a flaw, but it made him harder to connect with than Killua, whose internal conflicts are constantly on the surface. This is where Hunter x Hunter became something exceptional. The Phantom Troop's introduction is one of the best villain group reveals in anime. Not just because they are dangerous, but because they feel real to each other. Most villain factions in shonen feel like alliances of convenience, one betrayal away from collapse. The troop feels like a family, a deeply broken, morally indefensible family, but a family nonetheless. That makes them far more compelling than the typical evil organization. Kurapika clicks into place here completely. His intelligence, his restraint, his resolve, and crucially the fact that his entire ability set was designed specifically to dismantle the Phantom Troop. That kind of intentional, focused character design is rare. Kurapika vs Vogin remains one of the most satisfying fights in the series. And then there is Crollo, mystery in human form, unreadable, controlled, never quite showing his hand. His brief scenes carry enormous weight precisely because of how little he reveals. But I was a little disappointed in him because he got played by Hisoka. But it could be that he was intentionally playing it out because of the prophecy. For me, Yorknew City is the peak of Hunter x Hunter. Nothing in the show surpassed it. Greed Island isn't as strong as Yorknew, but it's a functional arc with some genuinely interesting ideas. The subplot of Hisoka hunting for a Nen exorcist to remove Kurapika's ability from Crollo is a clever thread that deepens the world. By this point, the Gon-Killua friendship had fully won me over. Their chemistry is one of the show's most consistent pleasures. But Greed Island is where I started noticing two structural problems that would persist into the next arc. arc. Problem 1. The fights are almost never between equals. The majority of major confrontations in this show are heavily mismatched, and not in interesting ways. Once a fight starts, you usually know who's losing within the first few minutes. That kills tension. Problem 2. Nen stops being clever. Early Nen was about application, misdirection, creativity, the rules being bent in surprising ways. As the show progresses, Nen increasingly becomes about quantity. Who has more aura? The system that once felt limitlessly inventive starts feeling like any other power scaling mechanic. I know this is the hill a lot of people will fight me on, so let me be precise about what works and what doesn't. What works? Miriam. His arc is exceptional. Watching an apex predator slowly discover something that power can't touch. His relationship with Komugi and the game of Kungi is some of the best character writing in the series. His final moments playing a quiet game while dying are genuinely moving. Miriam and Komugi are the reason this arc isn't ranked lower for me. Pito's introduction also works brilliantly. She kills Kyle, turns him into a puppet, and establishes herself as the first threat in the arc. That feels truly terrifying. That cold predator energy was exactly what the story needed. Now let's talk about what doesn't work. The pacing. This arc is bloated, filled with many ants that I really don't care about. And the narrator becomes a genuine problem. There's a point where the narration stops supporting the story and starts replacing it, spelling out tension and emotion that the animation should be creating on its own. It feels like a lack of trust in the medium. The other royal guards, Yuppie and Puff, are a significant disappointment after Pito. Yuppie is straightforwardly uninteresting, both in personality and ability. Puff's power set veers into territory that undercuts his menace rather than enhancing it. He almost feels like a meme character. After Pito, the bar was set high, and neither of them able to clear it. And Pito herself suffers from an inconsistency problem. Her sudden shift toward sympathy in the Gon confrontation, while emotionally intended, happens without the gradual build that made Miriam's transformation so effective. Miriam earned his change. Pito's felt imposed. It weakened exactly the quality that made her compelling. Gon's rage in that sequence should be devastating, but it's harder to feel the weight of it when the enemy has already shifted from monster to something more ambiguous. The scene needed the merciless Pito, not the reluctant one. Netro versus Miriam also suffers from the mismatched fight problem. I was hoping to see some Nen ability of Miriam in this fight, but the fight was so mismatched that Miriam wasn't even trying. And that's the problem I have with this series. The fights are not that good. The gap between two opponents are always too big. Though Netro's final move is a genuine surprise, and the poison aftermath gives his sacrifice the weight it deserves. I have seen too many great sacrifices in fiction are undone by the villain shrugging it off, but in this it works. The final stretch is brief but meaningful. Leorio's moment using his Nen and landing a hit on Jing is the payoff he had been building toward for the whole series. It nearly earns him the chairman seat. It's the scene that finally made me root for him. Killwa's arc to save Gon, culminating in his sister's involvement, is quietly excellent. It adds a real dimension to both characters. And Killwa, by the end of the series, has become one of my favorite characters with Kurapika. Jing himself is fascinating. A father who abandoned his son in pursuit of something larger, and a son who by the end seems to genuinely understand why. Their conversation at the top of the world tree is one of the most unusual parent-child reconciliations I have seen in fiction. It doesn't forgive anything. It just acknowledges the shape of who these people are. The final reveal that the world is vastly larger than any map we have seen lands exactly as it should. It doesn't conclude the story, it opens it. Hunter x Hunter is a genuinely good anime. Yorknew City is one of the best arcs in the genre. Nen is a brilliant designed power system, at least in its early applications. Miriam is a masterclass in villain writing, and the friendship between Gon and Killua is the emotional core that earns every difficult moment. But the greatest anime ever made? No. Chimera Ant, which is presented as the masterpiece, as the best arc in anime history, is too bloated to be considered a masterpiece. 70% of that arc was bloated. Yes, it had some of the great moments, but it doesn't justify the bloated part of the arc. And the narrator becomes a crutch. The fights loses tension because of how rarely the sides are matched. Calling something perfect before someone experiences it almost guarantees they will be disappointed. That's not the show's fault, it's what happens when a fandom turns appreciation into mythology. Hunter x Hunter deserves honest engagement because it's good enough to survive it. After all said and done, I will end it by saying that after finishing Hunter x Hunter, I am drowning in an indescribable disappointment.